So, we can start, I guess. So the town judge, myself, I applied for a couple of grants for the Harris House to do a bunch of work on the Harris House, and we had a heater put in there and a hot water heater. I had bought some things for the bathroom over there. I haven't really had much access in the last year and a half, so I don't even know if any of those things are still good, but I actually bought a vanity myself to put in the bathroom, so it would be, people would be able to use it that came to use the court. And we were moving along, and Joanna can help me with some of the history, because I have a tendency to just jump over everything. But we had gone to the board in 2000 and...
Well, the first grant was applied for in 2013.
So we applied for that grant, and we received a sizable grant at that point, $11,550, which was supposed to be for heat, possibly some repairs, possibly if there was mold abatement if necessary, for hot water, and if anything was left over for the general bathroom. Then the thought was to get it kind of up and usable, and then to apply for another grant the next year to see what additional things were needed. There were a lot of, we got the grant, which was wonderful, and we had a few different people bid on doing the work, and one guy came in, did a nice job, got everything set up, and we went from there to...
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
You're, on the bids, did you put those bids up, or did the town put those bids?
I did.
You did?
I did. I don't... Did the town come up with any?
Not that I recall.
No.
That's why I asked, did you have bids?
I did that.
You done the bids to
It is
utilize that grant?
It is, yes, and it is
Okay.
my recollection that Evelyn asked me to do that. To do the bidding process, so I called around to a few places, and then I talked to contractors that I actually knew that had done work that I knew had, you know, done good work and lived in the community. So those were the folks I talked to. And I submitted all the bids to Evelyn. I don't know if we still have copies of all
We
that.
have copies of 2. I believe there were 3, and I found the copies of 2 of them.
So I submitted all of those. We picked one which turned out, I believe, to be the most reasonable, and also I knew the product of the gentleman's work, so I knew it would be good. He did that. Everything went along pretty well. We talked about what else we would need to get the Harris House up and running. I wasn't really, I will say in retrospect, I wasn't really in the loop as much about, just as background, the court really is supposed to stay out of politics, stay out of public meetings, not really get involved, not listen into any discussions. We're supposed to stay really kind of outside of all of the politicking. And so I have tried to do that most of the last 4.5 years. So I wasn't aware at the outset of the needs of the town historian in particular. I was aware of the needs of the John Thurman Historical Society because I have friends in the Historical Society. I knew they wanted an office and storage space, and we were talking, and it seemed like there was plenty of space for everyone. And then as time went by, as we had applied for the second grant and had been granted that, I became aware that the town historian also could certainly use some space and had, in fact, had space in that building. And I think we, once we all started talking, when I was talking to the town historian who was here today, and Perky, and speaking to Perky Granger, the president of the Historical Society, and then they were talking, and we realized that we had been assigned certain rooms, and actually there were rooms that that might work out better for everyone if we were able to kind of agree and work cooperatively. And so instead of the court taking the back room, which I think was slightly bigger,
It's larger, yes.
that we would take the front room, and that the historian and the historical society would share the back room, and that would be better for them and a better use of all the space, and everyone seemed to be very happy with that. Joe Davies, thank you, worked to clean up the building, and Joanna and I came in and tried to help the Historical Society move some of their stuff around so that they could be put in the room that they wanted to be, and that we could bring their stuff upstairs for storage for them. There was an agreement that the upstairs was not up to code, the stairs are too steep, so we would not be using that for anything other than the Historical Society using it for storage, and possibly the historian's office using it for storage. It would never be open to the public. We'd put a chain across it for safety purposes. And then really, again, I felt it was important for the judge to stay out of whatever the political realm was, but we were really on the verge of moving in there. And then the brakes were put on the whole project. And I really didn't have a whole lot of information on why or why this transpired.
Who put the brakes on?
It was my understanding that Evelyn said that we could not move into the building, that there needed to be an investigation of the engineering and the building code and everything else. It was my understanding, and again, this was just me potentially just trying to understand what had happened, but I believed that perhaps there was a majority on the board that no longer felt it was a good idea for the court to move into the Harris House. And it seemed that it happened overnight. And we certainly can't on our own. I mean, yes, we've obtained thousands of dollars in grants from the state for the court to move into the Harris House, but it's certainly not up to us to just pack up our things and move over there. So we just kind of waited it out to see what the issues, the problems were, and I don't think we ever really got a good understanding other than the engineering report, which I'd been told about, and I've recently seen a copy, which, you know,
There was no formal communication as to stopping. I asked the
Okay, the communications between the judge and the Harris House moving forward was strictly with Evelyn? Did you
That is
conversate with any other board member?
I did not, no.
Because as a past board member, or a present board member, during that period of time of the past administration, I don't recall any conversation about stopping or concluding or following through, because first of all, when the grant was given to the Harris House by you applying to the court system, to the best of my knowledge, there was no conversation at the board table to talk about bids or heating systems or improvements or anything to that degree, and I can't find any of it in the minutes that I've researched, saying that we had any knowledge or any participation.
There were two board meetings where this was voted on, and the majority had voted that I apply for
Right.
funds with the...
I voted for that.
Right, with the intent of using it for the Harris House.
But there was no follow-up to say, are you going to use it for the painting? Are you going to use it for the foundation? Are you going to use it for the roof? Are you going to use it for what application to best suit the Harris House?
Right.
There was no discussion, to the best of my knowledge.
And just speaking from a strictly historical standpoint, because again, I get very concerned about getting involved in too much of the political side of the discussion,
I
but,
want to stop the political.
Right.
I don't want to talk about political.
But I just-
want to figure out how we can make the Harris House either acceptable or non-acceptable
right,
to a usage
and just
that
to
would
give you
happen
that.
best for the town film.
To give you as much information as I have historically, I don't, you know, based on my recollection of everything that occurred, I have nothing in writing, so I can't say that there was a official appointment. I made it my business not to make board meetings my business because of what I had learned and when we were taught to be appropriate town justices and going to town board meetings for anything other than to discuss something like this or to discuss the accounting of the town court really is frowned upon. So I did not go to the board meetings, but I think what I understood was happening, again, I don't have anything formally in writing, was that there was some appointment of Gail Siemens to talk to us, to meet with us about what our plans were, because Gail was there and we did have a discussion with her
I believe that.
at the Harris House.
May have been, I was shaking at names back then.
And I understood that that was, I had gone to a couple of town board meetings before I became judge, and it seemed like, so terrible with names, but it seemed like one gentleman had been appointed to look into something about getting more salt for the roads, for instance, and another lady was appointed to do something else for, to make sure that we had the appropriate, something that needed to be taken care of for the food bank. So it seemed like it was,
Liaisons, you mean?
yeah, that you know, there was appointments of board members to look at or look into certain things. And so, I mean, I don't want to say I was told, because I wasn't. It was more of a, you know, a agreeable, it seemed like a coordination where Gail's function was to come and make sure that, you know, we were making appropriate choices about heating for the building, and that the contract was in order, and that we were thinking about the right types of heating for a building of that age and that size. And I also recall that her husband had worked in the industry for a long time. So she was somewhat knowledgeable, maybe more knowledgeable than others, maybe not as knowledgeable as you because you have building experience, but you know, maybe more knowledgeable than Cynthia because maybe Cynthia doesn't have a family member that's worked in heating before. So that was my understanding.
That's why I hired good heating people and good pumps.
So you don't have to worry about that, right? So that was my understanding of how that transpired, and it was, I guess it was my belief, my guess, that Gail was going to come back to the board and say, this is what they're doing, and you know, this is why, and this, you know, and Evelyn certainly had the costs in front of her that she could explain if there were any issues. And certainly if we've been asked to come talk to the board about it, we'd be happy to do that too.
Well, you are. You're sitting here talking to me.
2-3 years
Finally,
later,
about 3 years
but yeah,
later.
yes,
Can I ask a question?
sure,
You did the grant,
right.
and you looked into everything. Did you ever have a problem with getting a grant for that building because of the building itself,
No,
the facility? Ricky Kenyon did a grant, and he didn't have a problem. In fact, they went ahead and took out one wall to make the room larger, and then they took the money for some reason or other. I don't know how they could transfer it, but they did to put that rid of that curtain in to make this the courtroom. But the facility itself has never been, I mean, I can remember when we cleaned that place. We
Right.
had 3 young men coming, working off some time,
right,
helping us load the stuff, and you would like, in the front and the back. To me, the front you're referring to is the one heading towards the town hall.
right,
Okay, where the old historian office was. And we talked about that you thought it was better for you to be in there.
right, from a safety
It's safer
standpoint.
for that, and
Right.
that we would keep the assessors, which was the only change that I knew was being made.
Right.
Because I was told I was this one, and the next time I was told I was over here.
Right,
But I never was told, somebody called me and used the word that the building had been condemned. And I moved all my stuff over there, nobody ever told me that. So you never heard about the building being condemned?
I've never heard about the building being condemned. I heard that there was a engineering report that found a lot of problems with it. I've heard from
When was-
friends,
Excuse me.
yes.
When was, back 2013?
No.
When you
This was
applied
when
for
I
the grant?
pushed last year to say, why are we
No,
not
what I
moving?
say, when you applied for the grant, received the grant, put the heat in, 2013?
Okay.
14.
2014,
Received the money in
yes.
14.
Okay. The engineer grant's February 3rd, 2016.
Right,
That's the
right.
building survey of Cedar.
Well, basically what, I'm an outsider to this, and I had spoke with Evelyn about the building, and she has said that being as how it was a previous use of that to be a courthouse, that a lot of things were grandfathered. And I didn't question because I don't know building codes.
See, that's why the question I had for you, where the stop came from, whether that was, somebody had got something told that the building was condemned and you couldn't do it, I don't know.
I just understood from Evelyn that we could not move in at this time, that it was not, that the board was in disfavor of us moving into the Harris house,
But they never said why.
that we needed usage, that we needed to look at usage of, for all of the offices but this was after we were already moved in, and for a while it was just, it was a stop. It was in disfavor, and we could not move in at this time, and we need to look further into the overall health of the building. The only things that I know of that came up, I'm just trying to think back, is that Joe Davies was no longer working here, and another gentleman who not sure if I learned his whole name.
Needham, I think.
Doug, that's right. He thought that building was a pile of junk, and he said that to Joanna, and I've heard that through the grapevine, that he just thought, and really, it seemed to happen that week. We were moving into, and I'm not saying that Mr. Needham had the power to say whether or not we moved into the building, but it seemed about that time that that was no longer a priority of this town for the court to move into the building.
Well, Joe was actively working
Yeah,
in the building,
Never finished it.
and when he left employment and Doug started, the following week or two after, when I got to know who he was, I said, so when are you gonna start working back at the Harris house? He says, I'm not.
So that is really the stopping point, but we don't know and that would have been October of 2014, I think. But we don't really know anything other than it had been decided by board members that we would not be moving into the Harris house.
Oh, that's what.
Presently.
Yeah,
To the best of my knowledge,
impression was.
as far as I know, in any minutes that I have reviewed, there's nothing that was brought to the town board as a board to say that the Harris house was no longer or being looked at to be taken over by the judge. To the best of my knowledge, it was never brought to this table.
There was something that happened in a positive way in 2016, and I was not to kind of relook at this. At least it was my impression. I don't want to say it was positive or negative, but it was my impression that it was positive, because I was approached by two board members in 2016 to say that they were re-evaluating the space needs of all of the offices here. And that was Mr. Youngblood and Ms. Shepler said, we're going to meet with all of the different groups and see what your needs are, and then we're going to bring a report back to the board. So I don't know how, again, I do not come to board meetings, and I do not know what the board talked about, and I do not know why they created a committee, and I don't know who created that committee, but I know that they were the committee that were evaluating the space needs of all of the town offices and what we could best do.
Maybe that's where this engineering report came
And we did have a representative of the state from the 4th Judicial District come and assess it for safety issues, for potential use.
Fitness of use.
Yeah, fitness of use.
And it has?
And yes,
Yes.
So you could use the Harris House for a court set.
From the state court standpoint, yes, were very interested in us moving forward, and I know that Mr. Chivers had made a few email overtures from friendly to less friendly as the last year has gone to Ms. Wood saying, what is the status? Because if you do not allow the court to move into the Harris House, you will need to return all those funds. And you will need to return, and the last time I spoke to him, before I told him that we were going to have this workshop and see if we could try to regroup on this issue, he said, you will have to return those funds this spring, because I've been very patient and I'm really not getting any response other than the Harris House is off limits for the court at this point, but he never really got an explanation as to why.
What's the total amount that you've received?
the total amount is $16,550.
And we have still got, at this point, $7,387.50 to work on the porch.
Did you say that again, 7,000?
$7,387.50.
Got 50 cents extra, huh?
Yeah, 50 cents is gonna help out.
But, you know, they could be used in different ways.
Right, but the point I'm getting at is that, Joan, you just went to a
Meeting in
meeting in
Warrensburg.
Warrensburg over at the library about historical buildings and so on. And how would this play together, jointly being Historical Society? Because I was the one that brought it up to turn this over to John Thurman Historical Society, and we were told at that time that the judge was applying for a grant and that it would be taken over by the judge. That's the Harrison. So how can we make this?
Well, we were never going to, and we never communicated that we were going to take over the Harris House.
No, but I'm just.
And I just worry about that from a political standpoint.
Okay.
And that's one of the
Let's-
things I wanted to be clear, if I could just say, that we would use that building one day a week, maybe 2 days a week at a stretch. We would use the office, and we would use that main area for usually 2 to 4 hours a week. So it's a pretty large room for the community to use if possible, and certainly there's the office and there's all of the storage upstairs as well, and then there's that main back office that the historian, the historical society, it was the whole goal, the whole point of the Harris House revitalization project was to have it used for the community. And having the court have it that one day a week, which allowed us access to some funding that the town wouldn't otherwise have, that we could certainly use to get heat and some paint and repair that porch and put a floor in the main room, which are, you know, and probably redo some phone and electrical for computers and things, you know, that sort of thing. But I think that most of that can be done with what we have left. And I don't say that in a vacuum. I really did this, when we started looking at it, I'm a small business person, so I'm used to doing things in a small business way, which is kind of informally. And so when we first started talking about it, I heard that there was, you know, black mold and this and that, and so I asked my farm manager, who is a contractor who I trust 100%, and his brother, who is another contractor that I trust 100%, to take a look at it and see how bad the mold was, and see how bad the foundation was, and see how bad the porch was. And you know, they were throwing numbers at me which were very manageable, very manageable in terms of what it would take to fix the porch. And I've later heard, you know, because things go around and there's a game of telephone, and you know, people have said to me, oh, I heard there was a quote on that place and it's going to cost millions to fix it, you know, and I know I have, I'm not joking. I'm not joking, I have heard this, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why, because I really think, you know, to have it be in really great shape, that we're really proud of it, and all the outdoor painting is done, and maybe the roof gets done, we'd probably have to apply for a couple more grants over the next few years. I mean, we've done it twice before successfully, and I think we could do it again. We could get back in the state's good graces if we could get things moving in the building. And so,
I have a gentleman that wants to come and look at it, that's from Arch, you know, architectural, historical things.
yep.
And we had a lady come when we were on the historical. She came and looked at it through the window, and she says the outside hasn't been changed, there's no reason why you can't get a grant.
Yeah.
And this other gentleman has said that he will come and look at the building inside, and
Is it Stephen? Again, I'm terrible with names, but Stephen, I remember his first name, I remember his last name. He came and looked at the old barn before we redid
okay.
it.
That what you would say one, because he did mention that.
Yeah.
But he said he'd be glad to come over and look at it and for the historical purpose.
For the benefits of the court, which we haven't really touched on yet, and I'd like to address that, is that it would give us as in the judge and clerk, whoever the judge and clerk may be in the future, twice the space that we have now. And the space we have now is twice or 3 times the space that we had. So I appreciate where we are, but it is cramped, it is tight. If we want to have a meeting with the DA and an attorney, there's no place that we can meet out of the earshot of everybody else. If we have a youthful offender situation where we need to speak privately, or if the attorneys need to speak, they have to go out on the porch no matter the weather.
And we put people on the other side. It's the youthful offenders in particular that concerns me, because that's something that, you know, in a small town can happen frequently and, you know, has. And, you know, you put the rest of the public behind a curtain, it's not really what the law had intended in terms of privacy and keeping a file closed. I do think we have more options at the Harris House for that. Joan and Perky had both been very kind and said that even if a meeting needed to take place between like a defendant and their attorney, that they could have like a meeting table in that office area. So it gives us so many more privacy options than somebody having to meet with their attorney on the front town steps. I mean, that's fairly clear what's going on, and it's not very, it's not a perfect setting for people when, you know, their privacy needs need to be balanced.
And it would leave the court set up 24/7, where if the judge had a night arraignment or an anytime arraignment, wouldn't have to worry about another event going on, wouldn't have to worry about disturbing the meeting, wouldn't have to worry about setting things up to have a basic area for an arraignment. She would be able to just unlock the door and grab her briefcase and be ready to go.
Yeah, we agreed on sharing keys.
So, you know, and it may not seem like a big thing, but from the court side it is.
And we really did have a very collegial, beneficial to all parties involved, I thought, and happily, Joan is here, she can vouch for this. I thought that everyone was very pleased with how things were going. You know, we kind of skipped off, and a week later the whole thing was just stopped. And I can't give you any information past that because I don't have any information.
Well, my theory is, you know, I was one that, everybody's very clear on my theories is making things efficient and energy and so on. Historically wise, I wasn't At the time, I wasn't even involved in the town end when I pretty near made Joan turn over bottom side up and say, let's bulldoze it. And we'll build something in replica that's energy efficient. As time has gone along, Harris House has its historical value. And it's one of the few buildings left in the town of Thurman that has those qualities, built by Mr. Combs years ago. And it was restored to a full restoration back a few years ago, probably 20 years ago, whenever this was done. The outside was done, painted, the porch was put on, everything was in good array. It's been left to this earth and could be brought back with help through grants. I've looked at it. Foundation-wise, I've corrected worse foundations as a contractor. I've fixed worse buildings by far. I think as a historical one, I think if we could make the historian and the judge happy, that would be a good thing, and then turn around and make the townspeople something that stays in town is a keen advantage. I mean, we've had people actually volunteer to come up and fix the ridge cap, pay for it, have someone come and fix that ridge cap, and was basically told that she couldn't do that. So I mean, there's a lot of people that I've talked to in the course of these events that would like to see the Harris House stay as a historical building, would like to see it utilized, and we have the people that need to utilize that. So what do we need to do?
So what is it you're asking for, to be able to go back over there?
Yeah, and quite frankly, I'm very comfortable in the town hall. I mean, I see the same people, it's a nice environment, but it's just we would have more space there. Filing and keeping everything organized, keeping it in one place would be nice, and from a safety standpoint, keeping it all together. Also because people have to come into the court office right now to update and upkeep the computer. That's really kind of a shaky thing from the standpoint of the from the state court people. Yeah, because people can walk through, you don't necessarily know who the contractors are. We could always fix that by moving into a different office or something in this building. So, it's not that we certainly don't want to be troublemakers. I've said all along, we'll do what is best for the town economically and for the townspeople. We can work in our office here, and we can work in this main area, or we can spend the rest of the money we were given rather than having to give it all back to the state, and we can use it all to improve the Harris House. We can apply for another grant this year once we use up this money and figure out what else the Harris House needs. Perky was just telling me today or yesterday that she's aware of an older townsperson that might have some interest in donating $1 or $2 towards the preservation of the Harris House, because it is kind of one of the town buildings that has been preserved and maintains the history of the town. So,
I've had a few people say that if they wanted to do it, and well, to be truthful, they said if the Historical Society wanted to do it, that they would volunteer doing different places part of it.
sure.
But the Historical Society is not capable of taking on a building that's been mismanaged for the last 10 years. I don't know when it started, when the Haskells were in, or when it started, but they tore down it when they took the steps out of that porch.
Right.
That caused more trouble than anything to the building, and
Right.
whoever did it didn't do it correctly, and they didn't insure it up correctly.
But, for me, and I sound like a broken record because I kind of use the same analogy talking about, things like the Jack Wax party coming up in a couple of weeks. But I really think we have an opportunity. We have a board that's working together well. We have a grant from the state that we can use, that we can utilize. We have the opportunity, we have a good relationship with the state office, where we can go back for another grant this year. Joan's involved in looking at other possible grants, and I'd be willing to help you with that too, because I've done some grant writing from historical societies or, you know, other historical things. We can work together on that, and I just think that, you know, it could work as a positive going forward for the town, just shake off the, where something has fallen down or something has gotten broken, and just try to push forward and make it a positive thing for the community. That's my pitch. Or if it's just too expensive, I mean, I do think one of the things we have to look at is blown-in insulation or something with our next grant, because we don't want to make it economically foolish to keep.
Well, they've been heating it the last few years anyhow.
Yeah, but see,
You know, and what the cost is, we'd have to take a look at that. But it's
Well, we
been
only
heated.
have to
it's
turn
being
the heat
heated
up
right
one
now.
day a week.
yeah, I mean, in the winter time, it's just
That's
one
it,
day
it's
a
being
week.
heated now,
Yeah.
with no use.
And one of the other things that, in my thought, is that the Jack Wax is one of the biggest events that I know of in the town. And having the bench here, it had to be removed last year, and damage was done to the bench and taking it outside. And if that's gonna have to happen every year, it just
Yeah,
seems that, you know.
That's a.
They're not gonna move it
non-current.
out this year, because I've been a curmudgeon about it, but, I mean, it would be better for the town, it'd be better for the band, it would be better for the public if we could just get it out.
Yeah, the band doesn't really like being.
Yeah, just leave it open there, leave it
I
there.
said the band didn't really like being a judge. I think that there's gotta be some push and give here to make something like that work and function. Historical Society is slim in need of help. Sounds like the judges and some needs and help.
Historians.
So
Yeah.
how can we make, that was my question, is how, with your grant and Joan possibly coming up with an architectural look at historic end, that between the two and some volunteer help that has been mentioned about helping the Harris House to people who are, one, related to the Harris House, who have had enjoyment of the Harris House, who are interested in the historical end of the Harris House, can do a lot of things to make that work.
Yeah, no, I think I really felt like we were in 100% agreement before. and so.
There's definitely, we could share a building.
Yeah, but it sounds
We're
like
at your
a,
office right now, and maybe Jamie could get out of the closet.
Right.
I say, it sounds like it would be kind of a good package for the simple fact that Joan needs to have a place as a historian to store artifacts. And she's been shuffled all over the parts of this town hall, the Harris House, the basement, wherever she can find places that are requiring some important documents that nobody's really paid attention to or given much enthusiastic inquiry to until just gathering right here.
Well, and we can certainly, you know, jump in and you know, do whatever work we're allowed to. I mean, I don't want to overstep, but I can try to get bids for the work if you want me to. Or I can just say, these are the things we need. If you guys want to get bids for the porch, here's the funds we have. It doesn't matter to me. You know, to that end, I do believe that Charles, it's so bad with last names, the building inspector.
Charlie Ross.
Charles, thank you very much. Sorry, Charlie. I do believe he was over there and he had wanted I had heard at one point, again, this is second hand or third hand, so I don't know for sure, but I'd be happy to call him up and say, do you want to do a walkthrough and tell us what we need to spend money on first? Or if you folks want to do that, you can do it. I don't care. I would just love to get the project moving before the porch sags some more and we have to do more to fix it, that's all.
Conversation with Mr. In
Mr.
charge of Warren County.
Yep.
Pretty much, that historical building is granted. There's not a lot of criteria due to the fact of checking through it on building codes and so on. It has to do with making it a usable building with a good handicap access, because it would be a public building, which at this stage of the game it's not.
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
But
does
it's-
anybody know if
but
the
it-
ramp is?
It's not where and it's not a huge dollar amount
There's,
to take and address.
Yeah,
One
it
of
has
the
to be a
things that's
certain
happening.
grade.
I think that
Yeah.
the grade is off, is what I
Well,
understand.
what happened
and
with
it's
the footings, the
confirmed.
footings were poured top of the ground, frost over the course of a period of time is raising out of the ground. So that's why the porch tipped back towards the house. I
Mhm.
mean, it's really simple. It can be supported, many porches have been raised, supported, new footings have been put under those, and when the town originally bought that building from Lane's, there was no porch on, the porch was off. It was put back, and I'm not gonna say put.
But I just saw the pictures tonight, I didn't realize that it had been taken off and put back. So the good news is that porch is only
A few years.
30 years old, so it's not that old by
It could be
comparison.
repaired, and not huge amounts. I mean, you can go in and support the porch, dig the footings, put them down the correct 4-foot level where they pour the top of the ground, where the frost won't bother. There's a lot of things that in that particular building that can be done without a major concern. I mean, I deal with engineers all the time, and they have their book learnings and others. There's some things that
Downstairs, it's been renovated quite a bit,
Yep, it's been changed quite a lot.
and it's been improved upon.
Right, and all that painting that Joe did, I mean, that's all there waiting for somebody to utilize, so.
Could they like move in and work and kind of be going on while they're in there?
I think
Does
it-
it all have to be done before,
we
or
have-
can they move in?
I think there
We
needs
do
to be
have we do have a maintenance engineer, Steve Baker,
right,
who is working 20 hours a week presently, could be, you know,
I go in
directed in
there.
that way.
I can work over there now.
And in and out, I mean, we have to make a safe entry.
I think the
For
handicap
the public.
accessibility is the big deal for
Let's
it.
say for the public, that handicap ramp has to be of stability, 1 inch per 12 inches of rise, to meet standard code. But it has to be changed footing wise because it's on top of it, it's not vertical. And
It's
it's
the
not a
bottom line
huge
is
thing.
you wanna move back in there, and would you be willing to move back in it the way it is now? If they fix the steps or something?
As long as a handicapped defendant or plaintiff would be able to get in, be able to access it, I'd be happy to move them in.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have to work with the state right away to get the computers up and working properly and get a phone line over there. I'm not sure if there is one right now, but that's not gonna be a lot of effort.
Well, last week, I knew that the line for the internet was active, and that the phone lines was active, or could be active. But now that we have the new phone system, it might not be.
I couldn't get my computer to work with it.
But, but that would be the only things that we,
Well, with capabilities that we have, Wi-Fi here, it seems like with the tech services or whatever we have, it seems like we could make that communications close enough to the
We could
air
take-
source for them.
They're interested in what they've stated, and I said, then the town board has to decide and talk about it and decide what they wanna do later. You can't do that tonight, but everything that you've suggested, seems like, to me, I thought at first when Ricky got it, that everybody said, oh, it's got asbestos in there, you can't move it. Well, they went in there and took a whole wall out, painted it, and did landscape it, you did the things in there and fixed up the rooms. My husband and I painted the 2 rooms upstairs so that we could use it for storage, and
Sure.
the historian's office there was what we done, not too, well, probably longer than I can imagine, but not too long ago. Because I used to hold it, the youth commission used to use it, they used to have a library in
Right.
there. And I mean, we used it for years.
And practicality speaking, there was an incident, and again, I don't want to go backwards, I want to go forward. There was an incident where either oil was run out of, or someone turned it off. I don't know what happened, but what I understand is that the water heater, brand new water heater that we bought for, I don't know the exact amount, $1,600 or something, it was an on-demand heater, that it is completely destroyed. So we have no hot water over there, and we just took out 2 water heaters in our dairy parlor. So I'm not going to buy a really expensive water heater for it, but I would donate a water heater from our dairy parlor, and that would certainly should be enough to keep the sink water warm enough. That is something we have to address because the state spent money on that water heater and now it doesn't function, but I think if we replace it with a water heater, we can just keep moving forward. I think that's the only really sticky issue in terms of the state, and I think we just make a repair and move forward.
You know, clarification with the engineering report that you've seen, that will not do or take away from the fact that you could not have a judicial court over there.
I don't think so. I mean, we can show it. Should we, I guess we could show it to Mr. Shivers from the state. I don't know if he's seen it. It doesn't, as I understand it, it seemed rather vague to me. And again, I don't want to be political about this. I simply want to make the building either work or not work. It seems to me that it's saying that from a 2016 standpoint, it's a pretty, it has a lot of deficits.
Taking that engineering report, considering that as a political statement.
I do feel, I guess I do, yes.
Okay.
I think that it's a little politicized, that report, I do. I mean, that the house was built in the 1880s, and I think to put an expectation on it, that it needs, that every rafter and every step and every doorway meets a 2016 code, I just think that no building of historical value would meet those sorts of standards. So
Stipulations on meeting the new building code, or the energy code that done put up. If you were to put an addition on that building, then the addition would have to come up to code. The building itself does not have to
Because it's the original footprint.
come up. Correct.
Now,
Yeah,
if
we have
we,
an old house, I get that too.
if we do have the money to make the interior doors handicap accessible to the bathroom, which would take it through the main court, what would be the courtroom, through the, now it would be the utility room, what was like storage room, into the bathroom, would that change the historical value of the building by
Nothing
changing
done
the
on the
doorways?
inside.
No, they said what's been done on the inside was not taken away from the historical part of
Okay,
the house.
that's,
That's
I
what
was,
told.
I was concerned on that because
As long as they
I,
don't touch don't change the outside of it, like the filigree, that's David Icomb's signature.
okay.
And there's only 2 houses left, one here and 2 houses up from Jacobson Tony's store.
What was it, what's the signature?
The
The
filigree.
the gingerbread.
Yeah.
And the gable ends?
He owned my house too.
Oh, did it?
David Icombs did, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he owned that.
Yeah, he didn't build it, I don't think.
So, I mean, we'd be happy to move forward with it. I can ask the state if they have any concerns, if the engineering report puts any stops on there, but I mean, I've spoken to Mr. Chivers about this multiple times, and I don't know that I had access to the report when we talked about it. What he was concerned about was that there hadn't been a condemnation and there was nothing from a building inspector saying that we could not move into that building. And it was my understanding, in speaking to Evelyn Wood, that there were 2 or 3 things that Mr. Wallace, Charlie Wallace, was going to require. And they all sounded like fairly
Never mind.
The most important thing that one was about the door handle and one was about the ramp and the grade and having it be level, because right now it's really kind of,
And when the exit light had to be hardwired and it couldn't be plugged in.
Right.
I
So,
remember that.
with those couple of things taken care of, you could get in there and then worry about the rest as.
yeah, it makes me nervous because again, it's all a game of telephone. So now, you know, with your permission, once you meet and decide, I will go and speak to Mr. Wallace and say, you know, what exactly do we need? This is the bundle of money I have, and we'll make a decision about who we can use and see. I would expect with $7,300 we could do what needs to be done to make it a livable office storage space for the town historian, the John Thurman Historical Society, and the court to have, you know, their one. And then I would really like to, because you know, the one criticism I could see, certainly as a townsperson and a taxpayer, would be the cost of keeping it heated, irregardless of whether we're heating it now. And I do think that we would want to spend some money on a grant this year, or spend some time on a grant to get some money to improve the insulation value in there.
One of the things that happens in insulation is, like in windows, you know, you could change windows in this building. It's not gonna change the, you could bring them up. Most of your heat losses through ceilings, not through sidewalk. There's a, you know, sense back when that was redone in the building, spray foam has become an entity that is realistically, and rather than built-in insulation, built-in insulation has a tendency to settle and causes some other problems. But there's areas that spray foam insulation has its place, and old buildings happens to be one. Because I've never been sold on spray insulation. It has its application. So the idea would be is to take and look at all of these things and make a determination. Because I think if this board was to conversate with some of the people that Joan Harris is conversating with, and fortunately we had one of the ladies here, Ronnie Dibble, she stopped in, who was very interested in a Harris house. Has conversated with me. I've talked to Mark Harris, who is part of the family of the Harris family, and he said, I don't ever see it go away. There's some ability probably to get maybe some more interest in the historic end of the Harris house and make it a musical fashion and bring it back to what it was in, I think it was back in the 90s when we bought that, when the town bought that. We brought it up within a year. And
I was
it
made
had a
aware
nice picture.
that there was a petition to keep it that was circulated and
Mhm.
submitted.
And I got some phone calls.
And, you know, there does seem to be considerable interest in saving history. And
So we're at a stage here that if you go and check on what you think should be checked in order for you to qualify to use that building, and we have to discuss what information you've given us, and then we discuss what we think about it, and how it would pertain to either the cost to the town or cost, you know, what the cost factors that we would be assuming. And then we'd have to get back together and say, yea or nay.
Sounds
Well,
like a
we
good
don't-
plan.
plan to me.
What I would do at this point is I would call Mr. Wallace, see what he feels needs to be done. Then I would call the state and tell them what he feels needs to be done. Then I would come back to you folks and see whether you want me to get bids from a contractor to do them, if you want to move forward. And then, or if you want to get bids from contractors, and then we would just move forward.
Well,
from
some of the things that could be accomplished, I mean, we have a maintenance man.
there. Right.
Who's been contracted all
Sure.
his life. He's done this work all his life. And, you know, for all of our dollars and cents, Mr. Baker, Stevie Baker, is very competent to be able to accomplish, first of all, the handicap office, very, very account.
Great.
So we have.
You can put ridge caps back in. I mean, you can paint the building. He has all of these capabilities, done it all his life.
Sure, I mean, if he
And
has the
the
time
back-
and the resources, that would be
And the
fantastic.
backdrop is, that's one of versus bidding and getting involved in
Yes.
prevailing wage and all
Very
those things that go
time-consuming.
along with that. I think we could do this within house.
Sure.
And I think we're well.
You could take and turn this,
And you could take that $7,300 and you could get a lot done
you get a
with
lot
that.
for your dollar.
But you got a maintenance man and then you hire a professional. You're gonna have him move from being maintenance to professional.
He is a professional.
I know.
He's been a professional.
So do you
working
pay him as a
contract.
professional here now?
I'm sorry, he hired out as a maintenance man
And
who is described to perform maintenance in the town of Thurman as a
maintenance, right?
maintenance person.
Right.
If he wants to be a contractor, go back and be a contractor. Right now, he's working for the town of Thurman for 20 hours. That 20 hours could be put toward,
I agree with her, I agree with you there.
That in.
Just,
I'm not asking him to be a target man. If you want to be a contractor, stay a contractor. He bid this job, accepted that hourly rate. He is to do that performance as requested by the town board, the way I see that.
I don't, how long would we have to wait? Would we have to wait till the frosting's all the way out before we could level that ramp?
It's possibly that, right now, any place that has not been disturbed doesn't have any frosting. Today I moved some snow, and the ground is just as soft as it was midsummer.
So then possibly we could
Only
start.
place that
those
you're going to have frost problems or frost conditions would be in the aspect of where snow has been removed and it's been open to the air current, which is happening now for the unfortunate end that the snow is removed. So the amount of frost,
Saw plow done by the.
But not
Not
by the ramp.
Yeah.
what are you looking for time frame? Because frost is not at this stage of the game, you know, the trees are melting, everything's going away from the trees, sugar season's gonna be short, I don't see a big frost season.
I was just curious
What's
as
your
to.
time frame?
Well, I
What would you expect as the judge needing to move forward and move into the hair service?
I just think whatever's easiest on the people doing it, really. We don't have a timeframe need. I mean, we were kind of joking about, wouldn't it be nice if we could get the bench out of here for the Jack Wax party, because it's always such an impediment in space.
Move it once. That would be a good clue.
But I don't know that that's realistic. It just seems like we're asking too much. And we're asking for trouble. I mean, Charles Wallace has to come in and take a look at it, the state's got to sign off on it. Mr. Baker has to have the time to do the work. You know, and we don't want to be in a situation where, you know, we have someone with some handicap coming to court and then they're somehow prevented from coming because of,
That was only a question,
Yeah.
what your time frame was.
we don't
And we don't
care.
have, and being unobligated, if you move forward,
Yeah.
if this was a decision to move forward on a Harris House,
We
then
worked,
that would eliminate the problem of refunds or
right.
backtracking. You could forward track rather than backtrack.
Right, and certainly that would, I mean, if we tell the state at this point that we're moving forward, that we're no longer just sitting and waiting, but we're actually moving forward, and that we're going to we're spending funds on, we're measuring carpet, we're spending funds on new wood for the walkway, I think that, you know, they would be elated, because they said they don't want to take this money back from the town of Thurman, because if they do that, the money goes back to another pool, it doesn't go back to the court, and the court wants to see the money spent on the court. But they feel like they've been at a kind of a logjam for so long that now they're starting to threaten. So we'd like to move forward so that they feel like we're using the money correctly, and that this year when we ask for the money for insulation or whatever the next thing is that we need, that they're happy and they're relieved that this logjam is over and that we can move forward and they'll give us another grant.
do you think you can get your information in 2 weeks?
From Mr. Wallace?
Well, the
Yes.
police,
Oh, yes.
we were gonna check on.
If Mr. Wallace has the time for me this week, then I'll go over and look at it with him, and then I'll let Mr. Shivers know, and then I'd say we probably would have, know where we're at, and
They
certainly
would come up and
soon.
have to check too also, right?
They would just want to know that
Okay.
Mr. Wallace is satisfied and happy, and that we can afford to do what he needs. That seems to be their impediment in terms of moving forward, is just to make sure that all of the building inspector's requirements are taken care of.
And you're gonna show them what the engineer said about it?
I don't think that's necessary.
You don't think that's, I don't know.
Yes.
We'll ask them.
Because I know you mentioned that you would ask them, or they hadn't seen it, or you might mention it to them. I think that that's still, you need to do
I
that.
think it's his choice. I'll ask him if he cares about it. If he does, I'll send it to him. I mean, it's not like we're gonna hide the ball, but I do feel like that
Yeah.
is, as I said, a politicized document.
Okay.
As far as the maintenance man, the sooner the better, because as soon as spring and summer start coming in, he's got more to do outside, so this would be like a perfect time of year.
Turn
For
it
him to
around
have a little
and do it.
extra time to do it.
It could be a challenge. I mean, you know, even, we'll take a look at a couple different options. We can take and, have a couple weeks to work at this. There's probably some, I mean, I can get hold of, Northeast and have them give us a cost analysis, spray foam. There's a lot of things that can be done.
I like the idea myself.
Well, I've always wanted to have it open. I thought that, I blamed the town for it going down, because they didn't maintain a town building. They maintained it, other ones, but they didn't maintain that one, and that was one of the ones that was purchased because it was historic for one, and two, it was capable of taking care of a lot of different offices and things, so.
Well, if we can help with the financial burden and I can help with some of the legwork, we're more than willing to do that. It's, like I said, I've grown very comfortable in my little closet over there, but I also.
It's right there.
Yeah, I know, I was in there for a while too, so I totally understand. But I'm more than happy to help move forward with this, because some of the funds have already spent, and, now what do we do? It's kind of one of those things that keeps me up at night, so it'd be great to try to move forward.
And the more activity a building has, the better it is for the health of the building.
Yeah.
Makes it
And
healthy.
so I think if it's open and it can be used year round, and it's, people are in and out, and I just think it would be good for the town, good for the building.
And it's an icon for the town. I mean, it was, when Adirondack Light there put out, that was the picture they put up to represent the town of Thurman, was the Harris House. So when you talk about the icon, that's normally it's the Harris House.
So what do you think?
I think we're gonna have to discuss it and-
Do some homework between now and then, and see if we can't come to a.
Yeah. Well, if they can get some information in a couple of weeks, I would think the board is gonna meet in a couple, 3 weeks or something.
The 14th of March is the next regular meeting.
I appreciate your time to listen to us.
Yes,
and
thank you.
to see, where we're at and our thoughts. I appreciate your interest in what we have to say.
We appreciate your interest in your hard work also.
And taking your time to talk to us.
Yeah.
Well, it would
It's
be
always
nice,
good when you have a two-way street.
it would be nice if we can get this moving forward in a positive way for everybody. So, there's a lot of room over there. There's room for the historian and the historical society. Maybe there's some other uses we can use for the town as well.
Well, the beautification was having up there, youth commission was using storage up there, beautification was up there, and I thought TSA had some stuff up there. I don't know if they need that someplace else or not.
I think there is. I think I was supposed to get a banner this afternoon, and then it got dark. So yes, I think there is some storage being used by the TSA.
So, and we know that the public cannot go up the stairs, but not to change the stairs would be great not to do that, because that's, the houses is still got the old stairs there. But I was told that, I can go upstairs, but we just, well, the historical society was told that we could go upstairs, but we can't let anybody else go. That the public cannot go up the stairs.
But, not to prolong the meeting, but sometimes when you go, like, this past summer, we went to, one of the historical buildings down in Virginia, And they didn't change the stairs because it's not New York City. But I wonder if you put warning signs and if it wasn't just open for normal traffic, but if it was museum quality, if as this is, from this point up is historical, this is a museum, this is, if it could then be used
Maybe
as
look into it.
Maybe for pictures and things. I mean, one of the things we talked about 2 years ago too is as long as something, is we could display some things on walls or whatever for the Historical Society or the historian there, as long as it's not something dangerous that a defendant can take and, you know, throw at the judge, which is a concern of the courts, that, you know, we can use that as a historical display area too, because that big room is open to the public and it is a nice, you know, for something like that. So that's another option. It's just a matter of seeing what needs to be done and then seeing if we can afford to do it, which I'm happy to check into this week.
You gotta check on the stores that will work. I was given, I don't know how many keys, and I could never get that.
Well, that was gonna be my, I haven't been in there in 2 years, I think now, or a year and a half, so that I don't even know if my key still works, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get that banner, but we'll see. It's not- Well,
Yeah,
that
that's
shouldn't
the
be
next
too
one.
hard.
My office is off, the historical office. For whatever reason, I
What do you think?
Okay.
All right,
Take your
then.
time.
Thanks for your time very much, yes.
Any other stuff?
Back to my baby goats.
Yes.
Oh, we got baby going? All over the place,
There's
right?
7 in my living room, 4 later.
We don't have any land yet, but that's a couple weeks away. I got a donkey, it's not ours. It's not ours, we're just keeping that Oh, it's Chris Day, and we have a donkey to our house.
You know what? If they can do it all grant money, I don't care. I got news for us, Daddy. Nothing's grant money.